to our module on presentation and presentation design. In this first video, we're going to be taking a look at Microsoft PowerPoint. This is often the default presentation software that people think of, and for good reason. It's widely used across academic, professional, and conference settings, and it works reliably across platforms. Rather than walking through every feature, the focus here is going to be on how PowerPoint supports clear communication, pacing, and visual structure, and where it can become easily distracting if it is overused. PowerPoint is commonly used in lectures and conference presentations, grant briefings, internal organizational presentations. It's especially useful when you need a file that will open reliably on different machines or be shared with collaborators across different operating systems. It is less effective when slides are treated as documents rather than visual support, or when the software's animation tools are used to compensate for unclear content. When you open PowerPoint, you're working with three main areas. On the left, you're going to have a list of slides that defines the structure and order of your presentation. In the center, you have the active slide, which is where your audience's attention should be focused. And below that slide, you have presenter notes, which are for you and not for your audience. And in the presenter's view, you're going to see all of these together to give you a bit of a command center, a heads-up view before it goes out to the screen. Across the top, PowerPoint organizes tools into tabs and has a ribbon of tools working across the top. You don't need to memorize these. They're very familiar if you're working with Microsoft Office products across different, Word and Excel, etc. What matters is understanding that formatting, inserting media, and controlling transitions are all accessible and predictable across the different versions of it. PowerPoint also defaults at this point to a widescreen 16:9 format. This is aligned with our conventional aspect ratio for displays and projectors that we use in most settings. This is appropriate for most of these devices. If you find yourself connecting to an older device, it will adapt to that, or you can design your slides around that older 4:3 aspect ratio. Regardless of the software that you end up using, the same design principles are going to apply. Slides should be legible from a distance, and as a general rule, text should be readable from the back of a large room. High contrast between text and background matters more than decorative color choices. You want that contrast for e.g. legibility. PowerPoint often does many transitions and animations. Some of these are smooth and visually appealing or thematically on brand with whatever you're creating. But the question is not whether they look impressive, it's whether they help your audience follow the story that you're telling. Transitions should support pacing, not draw attention to themselves. Animations can be useful when you want to reveal information gradually or emphasize a comparison, but they become a problem when they compete with what you're saying and become distracting from your presentation. Your slides are not the presentation. You are the presentation. Slides should reinforce and support what you're saying, not replace it or require the audience to read instead of listen to you. This is where it is worth mentioning that there are tools such as Prezi that rely on non-linear zooming in and out based movement rather than sequential slides. These can work for certain kinds of conceptual mapping, but they significantly increase the risk of distraction and motion fatigue. The more movement you introduce, the more disciplined you have to be about pacing and clarity. One of PowerPoint's strengths is technical reliability. Files can be shared, they can be exported as PDFs, and presented offline without internet access. Presenter View is a particularly important feature. It allows you to see your notes, track elapsed time, preview upcoming slides, while the audience is only going to see the presentation. This supports better pacing and reduces cognitive load when speaking. You can see what's coming up and keep track and check in on yourself. If you are presenting in an unfamiliar space, always test your file on the system that you're going to be using. Check that your fonts have carried over, especially if you're moving machines, because those aren't necessarily embedded. And so if you're using a specific style or a specific typeface, and that's not installed on the computer that you are moving it to, then that's going to adjust your formatting as that font is going to be displayed differently. You also want to then make sure that whatever display it is running off of, that your slides account for the aspect ratio in advance, or you know how to technically solve that. Avoid relying on embedded media that you have not previously tested on the actual presentation machine. In the past, the videos and the audio files that you might bring into PowerPoint were not embedded within the document itself. So you had to make sure that as you move them from one machine, wherever you might be working on it, onto another, that those files also traveled with it. That's not true as much anymore. Might be for much larger sizes, but you can see that PowerPoint file sizes, if you take a look at the file information and metadata, do start to get relatively large because those are embedded and travel with it. So they get really big really fast. That's even true when you go to export it as a PDF at the full resolution, and that there are ways to optimize that so that you can transport a smaller file or be able to email slides afterwards in lower resolution without quite as many bells and whistles. The other thing to keep in mind with transporting those things from one place to another is that now you can also stream media and embed that in a player, and that you should be checking your internet connection if you're going to use that feature wherever that presentation is. Many people, myself included, have been in a situation where we have a video that ran appropriately but don't have a chance to test it, and then either because the internet just isn't good, we can't connect, it's not available, or it's just having a bad moment, that video doesn't play and we get a little bit sidetracked in presenting that. So you want to make sure that it runs smoothly. So if you're going to add those additional rich features beyond just visual information, that you make sure that all of that works from the machine which is running the presentation when you're giving it in a public setting. As you work on the Module 14 assignment, I want you to pay attention to how speakers use slides to support the delivery. Notice whether visuals reinforce the content or compete with it. Observe how pacing is shaped by slide changes, transitions, and moments of emphasis. PowerPoint is not effective because it has many features. It's effective when it is used with restraint, clarity, and an understanding of how audiences process visual information.